Greetings and welcome to a new video. Unfortunately, the last one got kind of cut off abruptly, so I didn't really get to mention and introduce what my next video was going to be. This time, I'm going to be doing a biographical sermon slash Bible study on Gehazi. Now his name's pronounced differently. A lot of sources say it's pronounced Gehazi. I think some of them say Gehazi. I prefer Gehazi, so I'm just going to call him that. But anyway, so he's sort of a well-known character. I don't know how many people know about him. I guess I'll give some description. I think he's a very interesting character to study. I mean, obviously he's not as well known as Solomon. I already talked about Solomon. There's a lot to say about him. Gehazi, he's not quite as well known, obviously. So he was the sort of like a helper or a servant to Elisha. So, first you had Elijah, and then Elisha, picked up the mantle after Elijah. And then Gehazi was sort of like, kind of like a helper to Elisha. And now maybe Elisha had other helpers, I don't know, but, Elisha had Gehazi. And Gehazi was not a very good servant. He was not a very good helper. And I'm gonna go through the all the details and just kind of talk about his life story. But I mean, those that have read the Bible, that have gone through these passages, they probably they might remember him. So I'm going to talk about Gehazi. Now his name in Hebrew, from my understanding, what I've read, means the Valley of Vision. So that's what his name means, the Valley of Vision. But I don't know, how far can you see in a valley? You're in a valley. There's a limit to your vision. And so I've titled the sermon, The Valley of No Vision, because you can't see very well. And Gehazi obviously didn't see very far. He did not have spiritual eyesight. He didn't have the wisdom that he was supposed to, being in his position. He could have learned a lot from Elisha, and been a good leader. He could have learned a lot from Elisha, but unfortunately he didn't. He was around a good man that was serving God, but he didn't pick up those characteristics by osmosis. It doesn't always work like that way. Just because you're around spiritual people doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become spiritual. It's helpful. It's very helpful to be around good role models and other spiritual people, but you won't necessarily pick up those characteristics. And Gehazi didn't. And sometimes people hang around people for the wrong reasons, like they have some kind of ulterior motive, some kind of selfish reason. And it's kind of hard to know sometimes who these people are, because you can't get into people's heads and minds. People try, psychologists try. They try to get into people's head. They try to understand how people think, and you really can't. You really can't. Someone who's deceitful and wicked, they can become very good at covering up their tracks. So here he had Gehazi, and I don't know why he was following Elisha. Maybe he had some secret ulterior motive. Maybe he started off well and then he just went off the wrong track. We don't know. Like, you're not told very much. You're shown his actions. That's all you can see in the Bible usually, is people's actions. You can't always see their thoughts or what they're thinking. You can only judge their actions, and usually they're what they're thinking that turns into actions. So anyway, so we're gonna talk about Gehazi. His name means no vision. I mean, technically his name means Valley of Vision. I just titled the sermon Valley of No Vision because he obviously didn't have very much spiritual foresight. He didn't have that sight into the future to see what's going to happen. In a very good illustration, a very good book actually, is Larkin's Dispensational Truth. There's a lot you can learn from that. I've read a few pages. I didn't get that far. It's very technical, but you can learn so much Bible from that book. And actually, Dr. Ruckman said that when he first got saved, he read that book like 4 or 5 times, and he learned a lot. Actually, I think a lot of his early Bible, like a lot of the stuff he learned early on, was I think from Clarence Larkin. Reading this book, Dispensational Truth. So it's a very old book. I think it's like over 100 years old, but it's a very unique book. It's a Christian like commentary, but he would make these drawings. I forget what he did. I don't know if he was a cartographer, engineer. I forget exactly what he did for a living, like drafting. It's some kind of old job we don't really have anymore because this was like 100 years ago. Like I don't like it's different now, obviously, than what it was back then. But anyway, he drew these. He has a lot of these like illustration, like diagrams in his books just to visualize it. So one of the early ones, like early on in the book, it's a very important one. He has these peaks and valleys, and it's a very good illustration. So he shows the various prophets in the Old Testament and how they're preaching, and they're like in a valley or something, and they can't see like what's above them, or I forget or if they're on a peak, they can't see what's down there. They can only see what's directly in front of them. But there's a limit. Like there's something in the distance they can't see. So basically, what the illustration was getting at was like a lot of these prophets, they would preach in the Old Testament, like Isaiah, Daniel, Jeremiah. And they'd say all this stuff, all these important things that are actually prophecies that'll be fulfilled in the future, like in the tribulation and the millennium. And they didn't understand completely what they were writing. Now, today, we understand what Isaiah meant better than Isaiah himself probably understood at the time that he was writing it. Because a lot of these prophets just wrote what God told them to write, but they didn't fully understand it. They were back in 700, 600 BC, and they couldn't see into the future. It's easy for us. We can look back and, we're like, oh yeah, obviously, duh, of course, the Bible said that. But at the time, they didn't have what we have now. They just had the Old Testament. These books were being written at that time. Their knowledge was limited. Their knowledge was very limited. And so they couldn't see off into the future. So I just brought that illustration because, kind of Gehazi's acting like that. His vision is limited. Some people just have limited vision, and not always by their own fault. A lot of these prophets, they just had limited vision because they're when they're living, you can't see into the future, and I bet there will be people in the future, maybe in 50, 100 years, maybe during the tribulation, and they're going to say, obviously the Bible was talking about this. Why didn't people 50 years ago understand this? Because we couldn't have. We can't see. We can't predict the future. All we know about the future is what's written in the Bible. That there's going to be a tribulation, and there's going to be a millennium, there's going to be eternity. That's all we know is what's written in the Bible. Everything else, that's just like hypothesis, theorizing. But in the future, 100 years from now, people are going to look back and there might be some new revelations found in the Bible, and some new Bible teaching that wasn't around before, because they will understand more because of their circumstances. They'll understand like, hey, these verses were actually referring to, this and this. So, it's hard. It's hard to make decisions when you have limited, when your vision is limited, when you can't see that far. It's hard to make intelligent decisions. And Gehazi made lots of unintelligent decisions, although he should have known better. And this is the case. Sometimes people do have enough information and they still make bad decisions, and they still think incorrectly because they're just not paying attention to what God's telling them. So Gehazi was obvious. I mean, God was obviously telling Gehazi a lot of good things, a lot of important things, but he simply was not listening to Elisha. Elisha was his mentor, and he was just not listening to what his mentor was telling him all this time. He didn't learn the lessons he should have learned. So yeah, this is like a really long intro. But yeah, and there are plenty of Gehazis in the Bible, plenty of stories just like his. You got Achan, who caused a lot of problems. Actually, I have another sermon. I do have a sermon on Achan, how he sinned and he caused a lot of problems for people around him. A lot of these people that sin and they make selfish decisions, they don't just hurt themselves, they hurt people around them. They cause problems to the people around them. Other people suffer. When you don't do right, it's not just you that suffers. Other people around you are going to suffer, because there's good that's not being done that should have been being done, that you should have been doing good, and the people around you aren't benefiting from the things you should have been doing. Or even worse, you could be doing damage. You could be doing all the wrong things and hurting those people around you. So you got Achan, you got Esau. Esau is a famous one, famous example. He just sold his birthright for like a cup of chili, basically, and that's people. People are like that. They will sell away blessings for something really small and temporal, for like a one-time thing. I mean, you could get into lots of stories. Sin. People make one bad decision one night. They get drunk and they do something stupid, and they suffer for it for the rest of their lives. They get a DUI or worse, and that's what happens. Being unstable for just a short amount of time could cause so much damage. You got Achan, you got Esau, you got Judah. Judah's a great example of just someone selling, trying to get a little bit of money, and then at the end, he didn't even want the money because he realized how much of a sinner he was for allowing Jesus to be crucified, and he didn't even want the money. Even the sin that you want, you're not going to want it anymore. You're going to feel sick. The money made Judah sick. He literally tossed it after just realizing the depth of that sin. Got Achan, Esau, Judah, and then so anyway, I'm going to talk about Gehazi. So anyway, I'm going to talk about kind of like the decisions he made and just kind of the basically his thought process, I'm not going to start from I'm going to start from the beginning, showing some of the actions he made and kind of how you can see behind the scenes how he's already thinking, and just the decisions he made that led up to him just getting worse and worse and worse, obviously. But then he also has a redemption arc at the end too. Actually, it's a very interesting story. Actually, you can kind of see it. So yeah, I have a few points here. So my first point is that he didn't have spirituality. That's going to be my first point. And it's going to take a few videos to cover a lot of these topics because there is actually quite a bit to dissect. So he doesn't have spirituality. And my second point is that he doesn't have integrity. And then I guess I have a third point here where I don't think I didn't even name my third point. So I have a third point here, but basically I guess you could say the third point is his redemption arc. I think in my third point I'll mention that maybe maybe he got right later, and it's kind of debatable if he got right, but I'll talk about that at the end in another video, but where I'm talking about how there is potential for him getting right. So I think kind of like Solomon. I think Solomon was a very good type of the modern Christian. I think his life kind of shows the modern Christian very well, modern person. Gehazi shows like a backslidden Christian, like the life of a backslidden Christian. But but there's still hope. There's hope. Even if you're backslidden, you're not serving the Lord like you should. God's hands are always open. He's always waiting for you to come back. The door is open. As long as you're alive, the door is open. You can always come back. There's no cutoff date. The cutoff date is the day you die. When you die, okay, that's it. Like you've done everything you can. But while you're alive, while God still gives you breath, you can always come back to Him. There's always a chance to get right. So anyway, so that's a long intro. That's a very long intro. So now I'm going to get to my first point is that Gehazi didn't have spirituality. So I'm going to read out of 2 Kings chapter 4. So 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 25. And I'm going to have to give some background details here as well, because the story I'm about to read, if you don't know the context and the things that happened before, you won't maybe completely understand why this is happening. So 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 25. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 25, it says, "So she went and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, It is well. And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away, and the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. So very interesting here. So there's actually quite a lot to dissect here, to talk about. So first of all, let me just give you the background of what's going on here. So earlier in the story, earlier in 2 Kings, so there was this woman, the Shunammite woman, and she's married, and they didn't have a child with her husband, and she had a lot of respect for Elisha, and she said, hey, she told her husband, hey, let's make like a special room for Elisha, and when he's passing by, he can stop by and visit us, and all of that. And so Elisha was sort of kind of like a friend of the family in a way. He'd kind of stop by and chat with them, and eventually he says, hey, you don't have a child, let me bless you. Maybe you'll have a child that's born. And she says I don't know if they were too old, or if they've been trying for so long, they're like, yeah, it's impossible, we're never gonna have a kid. And Elisha said, no, it's gonna happen, and eventually, yes, she did. She had a kid. So what happened here was, sometime later, her kid got sick, her son got sick and died. So she didn't even plan on having a kid all this time. Then eventually she had a son, and then her son, I don't know what age he was. I don't know the time frame. I don't know if he was a small child. I don't remember the detail. I don't know what the time frame exactly was for all these events, but her son died, and so she's she's in agony, because she's well, I didn't even want a kid, and now we had one, and now he died, and it's kind of she's asking God, why? Why did you even give me this blessing if you're just going to take it all away? And there's a lot of talk about there, how you're I didn't even want a son to begin with, and now he's dead, and so she's just in agony. And this is basically what just happened here. So all those events that that led up to this. So she's coming to Elisha for help. I want you to resurrect my son. And she believes he can do it. And well, she's crying, or maybe I don't know if she does, but she's you did this to me. You gave me this child, and he's dead now. Make it right. Bring him back. And I'm kind of reading into this, but basically, this is kind of what I'm seeing here. And so anyway, so this is kind of the background, and there's plenty to talk about just there. Even you could talk about her actions, you could talk about Elisha, but now the main topic here is Gehazi. How is Gehazi handling all of this, right? How is he handling it? So so that's what we're going to talk about. How is he handling this? How is he seeing this situation? So what you can see here, so there's a few things. Okay, so yeah, we're back. So we're going to we're going to talk about Gehazi, Gehazi. How is he handling the situation? So so here in this first verse here, verse 25, it says, so she went and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel, and it came to him, when this man of God saw far off, that he said to Gehazi, his servant, behold, yonder is that Shunammite. So the man of God, it's a reference to Elisha. And Elisha tells Gehazi, okay, go and talk to her, Okay. So he goes to this woman. Right now I pray that you meet her and say unto her, is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, "It is well." And you know how like when you talk to people, it's like, "How are you doing?" Everyone just says like, "Yeah, I'm okay," and everyone's okay. Everyone always says that, even if they're depressed, most people are just gonna say, "Yeah, I'm fine." Like very few people are gonna be honest, like, "No, I'm actually not doing too well." No, everyone just says like, "Yeah, we're fine," and um, that's just how people are. But okay, this is different though. So this woman, she probably knows who Gehazi is. She might have met him before, but he, Elisha is going to ask her. I mean, Gehazi is going to ask her all these questions. Is it well with thee? And she answered, "It is well." Beyond the altar stream might. Right now, I pray that you meet her and say to her, "Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband?" And she answered, "It is well." And when she came to the man of God, she caught him by the feet. So Gehazi went and he asked her all these questions. Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with your child? Okay, it's obviously the answer is no, it is not well with me. Her son just died. Okay, it's not well with her. Is it well with the child? Specifically asking, is it well with the child? And she says no. So she lies to him. Why? Because I mean I'm just reading into this, but she doesn't trust him. She doesn't trust Gehazi. She trusts Elisha. She goes to when she gets to Elisha, she starts bawling and she starts telling him the truth. She wants to talk to Elisha, probably because he's the one that made all this happen. He's the one with the power. He's the one with the power to make something happen. Gehazi doesn't have that power. This woman knows that. She knows that he does not have that spirit, the power to do that. He does not have the power from God to do that. He doesn't have that spirituality. He doesn't have the spiritual backbone. He doesn't have that spiritual growth to make anything happen, to fix her problem. Elisha, she believes, can fix her problem, but she does not have that faith in Gehazi. She completely ignores him. Like she just says, "Yeah, no, everything's fine. Okay, okay, now take me to Elisha." So so Elisha tells Gehazi to ask all these questions, and the woman just like, yeah, the woman answers them, but she doesn't tell him the truth, because she's not gonna tell her problems to Gehazi. She doesn't trust him. She doesn't know him like she knows Elisha, and that's what's gonna happen. Like, do people trust you? There's gonna be people that can confide in you. There's gonna be people that can't. And if you've built up a relationship with someone, then they might be willing to tell you something that they wouldn't tell someone else. So Gehazi just gets completely ignored. He's not not a leader, and um, and just because she doesn't tell him, now obviously just on this alone, you wouldn't say Gehazi's like a bad person or he's like some kind of mischievous person or like untrustworthy, right? Just by one thing, but knowing what happens later and his attitude, you can probably add some details here. You can probably read a little more into it and say like, no, she probably doesn't trust him, or maybe she has met him before and she knows that I can't trust this guy. That I'm gonna go to the leader. I'm not gonna trust um, some random guy. And so yeah, that's just the truth. There might even be some people in church that you can't trust. You're not going to tell just anybody in church your problems. Like there's only a few people you might tell them to. So your closest trusted friends. There's just going to be some people that you just can't trust. You can't trust them with the truth, even Christians, because they're going to spread rumors. They're going to stab you in the back. You can't trust anybody. You can't trust everybody. There might only be a few people, like the pastor, maybe not even every single deacon. If you can't trust the pastor, then that's really bad. That might not even be a church you want to go to if you can't even trust the pastor. Um, but yeah, because if the pastor's no good, then what does that say about the church? So basically, it just shows like you can't trust everybody, and she doesn't trust Gehazi. Uh, she doesn't confide in him. She knows she can't. She goes to Elisha. When she gets to Elisha, then she tells him the truth. She tells him everything she thinks about what she thinks about the situation. And at that point she starts bawling. and just being very open, very honest at that point, because she doesn't trust Gehazi. And so you want to be Elisha. You don't want to be Gehazi. You want to be Elisha. You want people to see you, to trust you, to confide in you, and to be like I don't want to say a counselor, but and I understand not everybody has that talent to be like a counselor, like to help people, and you can't do that for everybody, and not everybody's going to trust you anyway. You're going to have a certain personality, and some people are just going to be drawn to your personality. There's going to be other people that can't stand your personality, and you're not going to be able to help them. Like, no, God's going to use different people to witness to others and minister to them in different ways. So, but like right here, you can kind of already see Gehazi's lacking something, right? And just that alone, like, wouldn't work it. But if you see that next verse, verse 27, it says she was at his feet and she was grabbing his feet, and he was going to thrust her away. So that's what I'm going to start talking. That's what I'm going to talk about, is that he's thrusting her away. So that's telling you a lot there. So just what happened earlier, her not trusting him, that would not be enough. But his attitude towards her, towards someone trying to get help, that desperately needs help, his attitude towards that is showing a strong lack of Christian, it's not, okay, at that point it wouldn't really be Christian, but of godly character, just very bad. Yeah, so anyway, basically I'm just saying, what I was saying was that she can't trust Gehazi. So, and with good reason, and obviously from verse 27 you can kind of see it. He's thrusting her away. So that's kind of what I'm going to get into, like, the next video. Next video I'm going to start talking more about how, like, Gehazi's actions, and how he's thrusting her away, and then how, and it kind of like talk about various other, like, some places in the Bible that are very, very similar to that. Like Jesus' disciples, and kind of like a parallel here, how they're acting here as well. So yeah, there's so much to dissect here. So I think I'm going to start reading that in the next video. I think I'm going to cut it off right now and start the next video talking about just showing more. There's so many verses. Like, I'm going to read more verses out of 2 Kings and talk about these there's so much, like, I mean, just little actions, like small actions, but they say a lot about his character. So yeah, I'll see you in the next video.